Well, welcome everyone. Hopefully, you're able to dial in and join us. I'm glad that you're here. I'm Jeff Coleman. If you don't know me, I'm an executive and leadership coach with over 3 decades of leadership experience. And as people file into uh, the stream, I'd like to just ask everyone, if you get a chance, if you could just type in where you're dialing in from. I just would be interested to know where folks are joining from. Now, I am going to talk about the CliftonStrengths assessment. So, just to sort of judge where everyone is at, if I could just ask you to put a 1 in the chat if you've ever taken the CliftonStrengths assessment before, and put a 2 in the chat if you have never taken it, but you're actually interested in taking it. Okay, so today is going to look a little bit different than most LinkedIn Lives. This isn't a training session, it's not a presentation, and it's not really a walk through the CliftonStrengths themes. What you're going to watch, what you're about to watch, is a real strengths debrief, the way I actually do it when I work with leaders privately. So instead of taking notes or tracking every insight, I want to invite you to listen directly. In fact, I want to just kind of clue you in a little bit as to how I actually want you to listen. Number one, I want you to listen to what energizes this person. Okay, what would energize this person? What would make them want to use their strengths more? Number two, what friction or overuse shows up? And we'll talk about ways in which using too much of a strength can cause friction or just be a problem. We often call that unregulated. Okay, and also what decisions make this profile easier or harder to use? So, what is it about this profile that makes certain things easier, and what makes other things harder to do? And by the end, you should have a clear sense of what a professional strengths debrief actually looks like, and whether this kind of thinking would be valuable to you as a leader. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to start by showing you my CliftonStrengths assessment. I see a couple of 2s in there that have never taken it before, and this is what the first page of the full Clifton 34 assessment looks like. It's a 26-page report. I'm going to primarily look at this particular page because I think it gives the most insight. It's the best overview, and so I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you can see it a little bit clearer. And one of the first things I always ask my clients is, what do you think about the report? And so if you have any thoughts just by looking at this, I'd love to see them in the chat, if you don't mind. But what would you think if this were yours? What would you think about? Also, I would also ask the question, what was surprising about it? Either maybe something that you thought would be higher or something that you thought would be lower, and maybe it was surprising as to where it was positioned. Also, I would ask, what are things that you were not surprised by? Things that you kind of knew that's about where that probably stood. And also, what else did you notice about the report? What did you think of when you saw it? And so, like I said, today is going to be a little different. What I'm going to do is kind of walk you through how I would look at this report if this was someone new. And this is one of the things that I do in a CliftonStrengths debriefing. First, I would notice that there's an awful lot of what I'll call orange. That's the influencing domain of CliftonStrengths. And so these are themes which help someone sort of take charge, speak up. Oftentimes you see these in people who really enjoy or like to be leaders. You'll notice on mine, I've got command at 2, competition at 4, self-assurance at 5, significance at 6. So out of my top 6, 4 are influencing themes. You also see that number 11, which is activator, just outside my top 10, is also an influencing theme. So I tend to very much lead by influence. I try, and it's one of the reasons that career in the Army really resonated so well with me. Other things that I would look at, I would notice things that are not there. You'll see that I have 1 relationship building theme and relator. That's my number 1. However, if you sort of look at the rest of that little DNA helix, you'll see that most of the blues are all concentrated down to the right, which is the lower end of that, which is what, and we'll get into it a little bit later, is what we call our non-patterns. And you'll notice that an awful lot of my relationship building themes are in the non-patterns. Now, that doesn't mean I can't be relational, that I'm not relational, that I don't have any friends. It just simply means that there are certain things which fall into that category that they just don't come as naturally to me. And so one of the things I often point to and talk to people about when it comes to thinking about strengths, what does a strength really feel like? One of the things I do in workshops is I'll ask people, I'll give them a set of instructions, and I say, for 30 seconds, I want you to write your name, and I just say, go. And then people will invariably pick up the pen, they'll write their name, and after 30 seconds, I'll simply say, how did that go? And a lot of times I'll hear 12, 13, 14, which are how many times that person wrote their name in 30 seconds. And some people will look at them very strangely and wonder, well, why is it that, why are they shouting out numbers? Well, probably because the person shouting out a number is high in competition. So they thought it was a competition. So they wrote their name as many times as they could. Sometimes you'll find someone who said, oh, I wrote it once, but I went really, really slowly and I made it really nice and as neat as possible, because that's someone who's probably high in maximizer. And so then the next set of instructions I'll say, okay, now I want you to take your pen and put it in your other hand, the hand that's not natural. And I want you to do the same thing for 30 seconds, write your name, go. And then at the end of that, I'll ask them, how did that feel? And invariably I get many of the same, very similar responses of, it felt awkward. It was very difficult. I had to really think about it. At the end, no matter how much I thought about it, it really wasn't very good. And so what that really demonstrates is the difference between something that comes natural and something that comes not naturally. And so Gallup defines a talent as a naturally occurring thought pattern or behavior. And so the things that are at the top, those are just the natural way that you do things. If you're not told, if you're not restricted in any way, you're going to naturally gravitate to doing things in a certain way. Conversely, if it's something that's not natural, you're going to struggle with it. It's not going to feel natural or necessarily even right. What's going to really feel like is you're really struggling against it. And that's what something in the bottom part of your assessment is going to look like. So I'm going to start with how I would sort of debrief the top 5. And so looking at the top 5 here, I'll start with number 1, which is relator. It's in a relationship building theme. So a person with really high relator tends to think about it as someone who is an inch wide and a mile deep. And they're the type of person that when they go to a party, they love to talk to people they already know. And one of the things I'll also oftentimes look at is woo, which stands for winning others over. And in my profile, you notice that it's at 31, which makes a lot of sense because while many of the strengths, there's no direct opposite, relator being wants to go very deep with a few people, woo is someone who likes to go very broadly, network with a lot of people. So the fact that relator is number 1 and woo is number 31 makes a lot of sense, which means I really do naturally sort of probably shy away from a networking opportunity, but gravitate towards something where it's a smaller group. It's a group that I actually know. And so how does that show up in leadership? It typically means that someone with high relator may want to lead people that they really know well. And so they'll look for people that they kind of vibe with, that they connect with, and they may end up with a team that looks an awful lot like them because those are the people that they can, that they really relate to. Now, why is this good? Because they learn to trust that team. And so there's a great trust bond that develops there. And relators, when they're in charge of your teams, they tend to know everyone on the team really well. They want to get to know everyone really well, and they want to really go deep in that relationship. Now, why could this be a problem? Something to look out for in leadership is because from the outside looking in, if you're not in that sort of core group, it may look cliquish. It may look like that leader is hard to get to know. It may look like, wow, they're not really interested in my opinion because I'm not in their inner clique. And so things to think about once you realize that this is perhaps, the way you're kind of wired and what comes natural to you, you may want to take some deliberate steps to always look for someone that you can include. Always kind of ask, who else might be a great fit for this group. So that's relator. Number two, command. So I mentioned this before, that it's an influencing domain. It's probably one of the reasons I really resonated with leadership in the Army, because I really do enjoy leading. I like, especially when there's an absence of leadership, I'm very comfortable stepping up and taking charge. I mean, with the good thing about this strength is that when someone has high command, if there's an absence of leadership, they will naturally be willing to step up and take charge and fill that void. When can this be bad? When it's unregulated, when it is, I want to lead and it's not my place to lead. Also, people with high command can also be somewhat judgmental towards people who they perceive to be not as good of leaders. And so they tend to look and gravitate towards strong leaders because they tend to be a strong leader. And so they want to follow strong leaders as well. And so having someone with high command is great to have on the team, because they're always willing to kind of step up and take charge when no one else is. If you have high command, you do need to kind of watch that and regulate that so that you're not stepping up when it's not your place to step up. When you're not actually the leader, learn how to be a great follower. We used to say in the Army, when in charge, take charge. But the counter to that is, if you're not in charge, don't try to take it over. Don't try to take charge of things that are really not your strength, or that are not supposed to be you in charge. So stepping down to number three, this is my first executing theme. So this is deliberative. It's how I like to get things done. And folks high in deliberative, they tend to be people that like to take a long time to make a decision. And so I know this personally. I also will look on someone's strengths to see where's analytical. And if you notice on mine, you'll find analytical at number 10. So even in my top 10, I have both deliberative and analytical. And so what that may sometimes look like is what's oftentimes called paralysis by analysis. So I like to take a while to make a decision. That highly deliberative nature means that I'm a bit risk averse. I don't like to just step out without really knowing how I'm going to land that first, second, third step. In fact, the deliberative really actually wants to know steps 7, 8, 9, and 10 before I take step number 1, which, if it's unregulated, it can mean you never actually step out. You never actually take step 1. Looking at that number 10 being that high analytical that I have as well, that means that I really like numbers. So when I deliberate, I don't go off of my gut as much as I really go off of numbers. I want data. Now, paired with my high relator that I've already talked about, one of the things I love to do is I love to talk to people. I love to ask them good questions, and I love to really be able to really understand from different perspectives, different issues. But analyzing things is a great strength to have, because it helps you really dig below just feelings, but actually look for key indicators, especially data or things like that. Now, those two things combined would tend to make me really slow in making a decision. And so when it becomes unregulated, you may find that you feel like there's a decision that needs to be made, but your boss just doesn't seem to be willing to make it. Maybe it's someone who actually needs to be fired. A lot of times we see that they kind of know what needs to happen and they don't. Now, one of the ways that I actually can kind of overcome that a little bit is my number 11 is activator. And that is actually one that actually wants to go and is comfortable with going without actually fully knowing what's ahead. So that's my number 11. So it's in my signature talents, but it's just outside my top 10. And so for me, how I sort of blend all three of those together, it looks like deliberative and analytical, they really like to take time to use data to make good decisions. But once I feel like I've got enough information, that activator kicks in, number 11, which is let's go, let's move, let's get this thing done. And activator is comfortable making changes, can change on the fly, etc. Now I'm going to skip down to also to add one more to this mix, my number 5, which is self-assurance. I'll come back to competition in just a minute. So self-assurance is one that once I make this decision, I've thought about it a long time, I've activated on it. That self-assurance is a talent that helps me maintain that course, even in the midst of trials, even when things don't go as smoothly, because as we used to always say in the Army, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. So you're going to not be able to plan out steps 1 through 100 and get them all perfectly right. That just never happens. But that self-assurance, when you bring that to a team, you bring a bit of confidence, a little bit of stick-to-itiveness or grit or whatever you want to call that, where you're really able to maintain momentum and maintain focus. Now, when that becomes unregulated, what does that look like? It starts to look like stubbornness, a refusal to accept reality. And so it's oftentimes said that someone with high self-assurance, they think they're always right. Now, oftentimes they are right. Their gut tends to be pretty good, but they're not always right. And so how would you approach something like this? Well, just using me as an example, I would say that once I've deliberated, I've used analytical, I've activated, and I'm plowing ahead with self-assurance. If you want to change my mind, you're going to need to kind of reverse engineer that into some data. Like what you really need to do, what would be most effective to convince someone like me that actually, Jeff, you're not right, you're actually wrong here, is take some data, go back and help me re-deliberate this decision, because I don't question the decision once I make it. I feel like I've spent the amount of time I need. I make a good decision. But if you can say, well, Jeff, you projected revenue to be here and it's actually down here, and you thought expenses would be here, but expenses are actually up here. Well, now you've changed. It's the dynamic of my decision has now been changed, and I'm okay to go back and kind of re-deliberate that and then readjust. And so that would be a way, if you have someone who seems really stubborn, but maybe they're a data person. I mean, that might really help them to understand, is to go back, what data did you use to make this decision, and help them reorient that decision. Again, what this self-assurance brings to the team is, they don't change on a dime. They're willing to plow through difficulties in order to make things happen. And that can really be a great talent to have on your team. Now, I said I would come back to competition, and I want to go back a little bit to it. It's my number 4. Now, it's also an influencing domain, and competition is really rooted in comparison. So someone high in competition is constantly looking kind of to compare themselves, where they stand. And in fact, if you're a leader and you know that someone on your team has high competition, the best thing that you can do to really motivate them is to let them know where they rack and stack. Hey, by the way, you're the number 2 salesman that we have on our team. That'll super motivate that person to get to number 1, because they want to compete. They want to be the best. And so they'll compete. And if they're on a team, they're going to bring that whole team with them. It's infectious. Just the desire to compete, to be better, and to raise yourself to a higher standard can really energize an entire team. So that's when competition looks really good. When competition becomes unregulated, it can look an awful lot like win at all costs. And that's not winning at all. You don't want to ever sacrifice ethics for anything. And so you would have to be careful with someone who has super high competition, that they don't become unregulated and start winning at all costs. They don't care how they do it or who they hurt. They just want to win. That's destructive, and that needs to not happen. But competition can be something that really can elevate people to the next level. One of the things that I'll admit that where competition sometimes shows up a little unregulated for me is on family game night. And at times, family game night at the Coleman household, not so much fun, because phrases like, it's just a game, it doesn't really matter, does not resonate so well with someone with really high competition. You can say those all you want, but that doesn't really resonate with someone that's got high competition, because they do want to compete. And sometimes I do have to either distract myself or just continually remind myself that the goal, the thing that we're competing against, is boredom. We want to actually have fun together, do things together. And because of that, that's the competition, not I got to beat this person or I got to beat that person, because otherwise it can really devolve into something that's not really fun for anyone. Now, I want to pause for just a moment moment, because what I'm doing right now is kind of important for the context. So this kind of live debriefing where we slow down, we look at a full 34, we think about leadership decisions, what it looks like on a team, when it looks good, when it looks unregulated. This is work that I normally only do privately. Now, in early 2026, I'm going to open a small 10-person Zoom cohort where leaders can experience this exact process in a live, interactive group setting. I'm not going to go into the details just yet. I just want you to know that it exists, and I'll share how to learn more at the end. But for now, let's get back to the debriefing. And I also want to say that if you have any questions, please go ahead and put those into the chat. I am going to kind of finish the debrief, but if you have a question, something comes up, please go ahead and put it into the chat, and I will try to address the ones that I can at the end of the debriefing. So now I'm going to kind of shift gears here, because I've talked about the top 5 and how I lean into those and how I would help someone who I'm coaching really understand how to use their strengths, or what those strengths might possibly look like. But invariably, everyone always asks, what do we do with a weakness? And I mentioned before that we don't really call them weaknesses. Here at We Align Coaching, we call them non-patterns. And the reason, again, is because Gallup defines a strength as a naturally occurring thought pattern or behavior that you can repeatedly do with near perfect performance. So the opposite of natural is not weak. It's just simply not natural. It's that writing the pen with the wrong hand. You have to think about it. It's harder. You probably don't get the same results someone else does. And so you really have to work at it a lot. And so I'm going to shift down to mine, because when we go through a full 5-hour deep dive with someone's strengths, we talk about everything from your highest highs to your lowest lows, and we help you understand what this means and how to unpack it all. And as I mentioned before, for me, a lot of my blues, my relationship building themes are all at the bottom. Not all of them, but many of them. So adaptability, empathy, developer, includer, positivity. They all are kind of down at the lower end. So they are at my non-pattern area. And so again, doesn't mean I can't be relational. It just means that I have to work at it a little bit. So adaptability, number 28. Now that one's one, I call it the most misunderstood talent in all of Gallup. And the reason is because if you look up in Webster's, adaptability is just the ability to kind of change on the fly and move. That's not really what it means here. Here, because it's a relationship building strength, adaptability is really people over processes. It's the ability to say, truthfully, it's more important that we stick together than we get the mission accomplished, maybe. And for me, I can tell you that's really hard for me sometimes, because probably from my career in the Army and in corporate, I'm very goal oriented. I'm very results driven. And because of that, sometimes I can tend to sort of forget about the feelings of others a little bit. And so my adaptability can be a little bit low, because I want to drive on, I want to get the mission done. That's not necessarily bad, but it needs to be regulated a little bit. So when when adaptability kicks in, I kind of need someone to help remind me sometimes that hey, if we get to the end and we all hate each other, that's not a great place to be. And so we want to really look at how do we do something like that? How do we become more adaptable? Well, one is we can think really hard about, I need to be more adaptable. I will say that 9 times out of 10, that just doesn't really work. It's never going to be a signature talent. It could move up if you really work at it. The best thing to do, honestly, is to just pair with somebody. Find someone else on your team who's super adaptable and work with them and give them the freedom to talk to you about, hey, I need you to let me know when I'm getting kind of off the rails, a little unregulated and driving hard and driving the team, and I'm kind of burning people out. That's probably the best way that you can do this, is recognizing that you don't have this as a natural talent, and then finding someone else on your team that can help you regulate that. Okay, so woo, it's the one in the bottom that I have, which is an influencing domain, and it's not a relationship building theme, is winning others over. And so that tends to be your natural networkers, people that love to kind of network and meet a lot of people. I can say that's not really me. And so what would I do? In fact, I just recently went to a networking opportunity. And so how did I deal with that when it's just not naturally who I am? Well, for me, I went right back to what strengths do I have? Number one, I have relator. And number four, I have competition. So yes, I turned it into a little bit of a competition. I set a goal with my coach and said, I want to get 10 business cards. And so I went out, and that drove me, because closer to the end of the night, I did not have 10 business cards. And so I really tried, even to the point of just, hey, can I just get your business card before you leave, so that I could get 10? Now, that was energizing. I was energized at the end of the night simply because I kind of turned it into a competition. The other thing I leaned into during that networking event was my relator, because I really do like to get to know people. I came in with questions. I actually really did want to know about people. I asked about their businesses. I asked about what problems they had. I asked what success looked like for them, because I was very interested in it. And again, that was energizing to me. Learning about, taking the time to talk to another entrepreneur and just get to understand them a little bit more. That was energizing to me. And that was something that I really enjoyed doing. And so therefore, rather than just treating it as this networking event that I just have to grin and bear through it, I was able to actually get through it and be energized at the end of it, because I just used things that I was naturally good at, my relator and also my competition. And so I'll also point out, 32, I have a developer and includer. So with those two, developer, it's a trait that really wants to kind of naturally help people. You see someone, you kind of see their potential, and you really are driven and motivated to kind of help them get there. When that can become unregulated, if you have that and you really enjoy doing that, you have to sometimes be careful that you don't want that change more than they do, that you're not driving them to get better and to be more than what they are right now, and they actually don't want to. They're actually happy with where they're at. So you have to be careful about that. Now, because it's developers fairly low with me, one of the things I think that kind of shows up for me is that I kind of expect people on my team to already have the skills and tools that they need in order to have the position that they're at. And so it usually requires a conversation, again, using that relator to get to know them better, to really help me understand, what can I do to help develop this person and get them to the next level. I don't necessarily naturally see it, but a lot of times I can just engage them in good conversation, good questions, and then I'll start to understand, oh, here's a way that I can help develop them. Number 33, being includer. And this is one where it is also a little bit opposite of relator, that they always want to be bringing people into the kind of inner circle. They really like to find people that are marginalized or people that are kind of on the outside looking in and bring them in. Now, I enjoy that as well. But I'm not energized by it, and I don't do it naturally. So it's very helpful to have someone on your team to really help you do that. The other thing that it can also sometimes manifest itself as really making sure if you're a high-end includer, you really want to make sure that everyone in the meeting gets a chance to speak. Now, someone who has it really low like me would probably say that seems to be a lot of needless complexity. I don't need 30 people to tell me the same thing. If 2 or 3 people tell me the same thing, I think we're good. We can just drive on. And it doesn't bother me when I haven't heard from everyone. Now, someone high and included, that's gonna probably really bother them. And so again, the best thing to do is not for me to just try to pound it into be more inclusive, be more includer. It's to pair with someone. It's to really do 2 things. Number one, have someone on your team that has high includer, because they're going to naturally say, hey, we haven't heard from Jim. What does Jim have to say? The other thing that to do is to make sure that you know your team. And so oftentimes you'll see maybe someone who's high and deliberative, who they don't talk up a lot. They kind of wait to be asked. And knowing that that's what your team is, you can always say, hey, Joe, you've always got something. You're always kind of thinking out of the box. What do you got for us that we're not thinking about? And that's another great way to just make sure that you've included all the points. And sometimes sometimes there's always that person on your team that you feel like they're always contrarian. No matter what you do or say, they're going to say the opposite. Go ahead and ask them. Draw that out of them, and it helps you, arrive at a better decision. Now, my bottom one, I'll talk just briefly about this because it's kind of the source of jokes, and within my kind of my friendship circle, is my low positivity, number 34. And so at times I have been called a curmudgeon or whatever, but my positivity is just not naturally low. So for me, when there's a problem, I don't naturally go, all right, awesome. I'm excited about a new problem to solve. My reaction is probably more like this. Ugh. All right, well, let's get it done. Right. So I can, you know, pick it up, I can get moving, et cetera, et cetera. But positivity, I'm not a natural cheerleader. In fact, because it's so low. When I encounter, especially early on, before I really understood strengths, when I encountered someone who was naturally positive, I would always kind of feel like they seem a little fake, because to me it was so unnatural to be that positive, that when I ran into someone or I met someone who really was that positive, uh, it was a little off-putting. I would kind of sit there and sort of be judgmental a little bit, and say, I don't, I think you're kind of faking that. And so but I have to realize, and I've coached enough people now, and I've seen people with this high positivity that I actually really appreciate it. I love it when I'm on a team and I find out someone has high positivity. In fact, usually it's not hard to spot them. They're usually kind of the natural cheerleaders that people are like, oh, you can do it, or hey, that was almost there. You did such a great job. I mean, they're just natural encouragers. Great people to have on your team. Kind of wish I had a little bit higher personally, but I don't. So I have to kind of work with what I have. And so that's how I would pair with positivity. So I've asked for a couple of questions. I don't really see any in the chat. I'm going to pause here just for a few seconds, because I know there's a little bit of delay between getting a comment on LinkedIn and actually seeing the comment show up in my stream, or in the StreamYard stream. So I'm not seeing any questions. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and sort of wrap this up. But before I do, a couple of things just to think about. So kind of a 30, 60, 90-day leadership plan. So first 30 days, I would say, what do you do with all this, right? The first 30 days, I would say, take the assessment, read it, kind of digest it, ask other people to read it and say, me, how well do you feel like this resonates? How well do you think this describes me? Another thing you can do, which may be a little uncomfortable, is you can look at evaluations that you've gotten. Sometimes, especially ones which have some negative or some areas to improve, then if you've got areas to improve, and it resonates with, those are sort of lower areas within your CliftonStrengths, you're probably looking at a non-pattern there, and probably something that it's kind of got unregulated enough that it came out and that people made a comment about it. So kind of number one, really getting to understand an awareness of it, and kind of once you kind of got awareness of that, then applying it. And really, it takes a good 60 days to 90 days to really apply this, to really start with your top 5. How am I using these top 5? And what can I do to really do more of them? Because that's where you're going to get excellence. And also, you might look at your bottom 4 or 5 and say, well, when do I have to do that on my job? Because those are going to be the times when you're most drained. And is there some way that I can hand those off to someone else? Can I partner with someone who's really good at it? Can I just not do it? Or do I have to, is it something I actually have to do? In which case, then I would look for, how do you apply a different strength? Just like I used competition and relator, instead of trying to just overcome woo, I just redid the networking task in a way that really allowed me to do it in a way that energized me. And after about 90 days, you really start to realize you're actually incorporating this into just how you flow, what your vocabulary is. You'll start to kind of recognize in other people what their strengths are, especially strengths that you don't have. You'll recognize those. You may even be able to appreciate them a little bit more, just like with me and appreciating positivity. And you also may find just creative ways in which to apply your strengths. And so I got one question that says, if I have a team of 5 people, where do we start? Honestly, I feel like the best place to always start is get everybody to take their assessment. And Gallup will tell you that if you just take it and read the results, you get a 6% bump in productivity. But beyond that, I feel like, the slow way to do it, you can listen to 5 or 6 seasons of podcasts from Gallup. You can read tons of articles, and you can go through videos. You can do a ton of research. I've done all this. I've been doing it for a good 5+ years, sort of on my strengths journey. But if you want to save time, hire a coach. That's probably the best thing that you can do, is hire a coach to help you not just look at your strengths, especially if you're the leader. A good coach will help coach you through your strengths, but will also help you understand the rest of your team strengths. So each assessment costs about $60. I wish I was an affiliate of Gallup. I'm not. No one actually is. They don't do that. So no one except Gallup makes money off of it. But it's the best assessment you can get. So if you've got a team of almost any size, I would say get everyone to take the assessment, and then get a coach, get someone to help you really see the results. Okay. So I mentioned earlier that I'm running an exclusive 10-person live Zoom cohort. And if you want, so if what you've kind of heard today has kind of resonated, you've seen me do a debriefing, and you've kind of thought to yourself that I'd like to do a little bit more, that I'd like to kind of hear my strengths debriefs, I'd like to do that, then I'm running this exclusive 10-person Zoom cohort. It's going to look almost exactly like what you saw today, except it's going to be interactive. It's going to be real strengths debriefing, real leadership decisions, and real-time coaching for 10 people. Now, because of the depth of the work, participation in this is going to require that you send me your Clifton 34. Now, confidentiality applies, so I'll never share your results with your name attached to them to anyone else. But within that group, we will talk about strengths, especially ones that everyone has in common. But you'll not be identified as you in this particular strength pattern. I don't do that. I keep everyone's confidentiality. Now, who is this really for? It's for leaders who want to think more clearly, not just get encouraged. And if that's you, I'll post the application link in the comments after the wrap up. And now take a look, and if it feels like a fit, I'd love to have your application. If not, if you feel like this is not a fit, you're still welcome. Still appreciate you watching the live and the replay. Stay connected here. And I present a lot of strengths material, a lot of coaching material. So hopefully you'll learn something from that as well. And before I wrap up, I see one other question. Do you recommend a diversity of strengths on your executive team, or is that part of the assessment process? So that's a great question. Gallup kind of says you really shouldn't use strengths as a hiring process. And the reason is really because just because I don't have a strength doesn't mean I can't operate in a certain area. Again, kind of going back to that woo, right? I'm not, networking is not a strength of mine. It's not something that really energizes me. However, if you looked at my strengths assessment, you might say, we don't want this guy for business development because he's not a natural networker. However, I explained, I use my relator, I use my competition. I was energized. I actually, hit the mark that I wanted to hit on my on the business cards. And so I would really say that rather than trying to hire and fire based on a mix of strengths, I would say the best thing to do is figure out what everyone has. And then one of the things that we oftentimes do in some of our team coaching is we'll go through like an energy grid. And what we do is we'll line up like the 15 most common tasks that you do, how well you do them, and how energized or drained you are at the end of them. And then oftentimes we can get tremendously improved performance simply by rearranging those, because let's say you have a report, it just drains the life out of you because it's all numbers and analytics and you don't like that kind of thing. And you got someone over here who, man, they love that stuff. They love reading it when you send it. They would actually love to write it for you if you just let them. And then we just do a little task swapping, right? And then sometimes it's that easy. And then all of a sudden we call that alignment. We start aligning people with their strengths, where the work that they do aligns with the things that they're really good at, the things that really energizes them. And then when that happens, people, they want to go to work. In fact, Gallup says that once you're aligned with your strengths on a team, teams report 6 times more engagement. They're over 60% improvement in performance, and And people really seem to enjoy actually going to work, and it's all because you've aligned their work to something that they actually do, that they're actually energized by. So I hope that helps. If you have any other questions, please post them in the comments below, or you can always send me a DM. I'd love to connect with you. So hope this was helpful. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a happy holidays and a great new year. I'll see you back on some lives and hopefully on a Zoom call in 2026. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.